What is going on, guys? It is Trifecta J here, back with a new series on my channel. It's going to be a Madden 17 franchise. I put out the vote for you guys, and you voted on the New York Jets, so that is who I will be taking over. This is a team with some top-end talent and some nice young pieces, but still a ton of holes on the roster. You can see we'll be taking over as the owner for this first year. We're going to actually just be simulating through it, get through. We're not going to be very good. The Jets went 10-6 last year, but this year in real life have really struggled, so we're just going to simulate through. And in the simulation, they did really struggle as well. You can see an early draft story, a middle linebacker, not necessarily a position that I'm highly targeting, especially with last year's first-round pick being spent on Darren Lee. Looking at some quarterbacks, it's definitely a position that the Jets do not have a sure starter right now. They spent a second and fourth-round pick the last 2 years on Christian Hackenberg and Bryce Petty. So we'll be looking at some guys, but it's not a position because we have spent those draft picks that I'm looking to really reach for a guy and pick someone who's not worth that. You can see some nice prospects though. Heading into the bye week though, you can see we're 3-7 through 10 games, as that's not very good, but also not really the worst team in the NFL so far. A team that does not have any wins. The Browns only have 1 win so far. You can see Jocelyn McWilliams sets a team record for tackles for loss with 6 in a game. Very impressive, so we would go out and scout him. He's a top-tier talent. Now looking at some offensive linemen. A few later round prospects here. Dalton Pigeon could be a very good value pick, along with Eric DeMarco, a B+ run block, plus a B impact block. Not a great pass blocker, but that's something to expect. Not a perfect prospect from a late round guy. The Jets brought in Matt Forte and Darrelle Revis, hopefully and expecting to really be competing for a Super Bowl. Instead, they're towards the bottom of the NFL. Only 3 wins as I record this in the actual NFL. Really struggling. So there's going to be some scouting and us just going through the season in the background. But I'm going to just break down how I feel about this roster at the moment. So I already broke down quarterback, 2 young guys who we've spent pretty high draft picks getting. So then at running back, Matt Forte was brought in. He's a very good guy. He's a feature back, but he's also getting up there in age. So I'm not sure how long he will be around, especially he'll probably regress in this game. Madden definitely has a big penalty for older players. Then you have Bilal Powell, who is a very good player, but he's definitely not that feature back that we want. Kendall Hayward, though, might be that guy. He's a speed back, some nice elusiveness, actually very good carrying as well. He's a first-round prospect, though. Not really knowing if I want to spend that high of a draft pick on a running back, especially with so many other holes on the roster. Then at receiver, we actually have a very deep group. Eric Decker, Brandon Marshall, Quincy Enunwa, Devin Smith, who was drafted in the 2nd round last year. Like I said, a very deep group, a lot of talent, but Brandon Marshall getting up there in age, and a couple of guys who haven't really proven it over a long term. At tight end, no real options of the future. Harmon Calvin might be that guy, very solid receiver at 6'5", and there was another 6'7" guy who had a lot of nice receiving attributes. You can see now with only a few games left on the season, we're 4-11. So at offensive line, there's a lot of holes there as well. You have Orlando Franklin, who's played well and has a pretty good rating in game. Nick Mangold, who really anchors the offensive line right now, but he's getting up there in age, and he only has 1 year left on his contract after this year, so he probably won't be brought back because he'll definitely regress as well. Defensive line, probably the biggest strength of this team. Leonard Williams, Sheldon Richardson, and Muhammad Wilkerson, all very talented guys. The one thing that they do lack is a speed rusher off the edge. Those guys can rush the passer, but they're more interior pass rushers. Then at linebacker, you have Darren Lee, David Harris, along with 3-4 pass rushers, Lorenzo Malden and Jordan Jenkins. I'm not sure those guys are really starter caliber moving forward though, so we would go ahead and retire. And just based off some things that I've read, Todd Bowles' job might be in jeopardy, so they went with a defensive guy last time. So we're going to bring in Kyle Shanahan to run this team and be the new head coach. He, of course, will be running Atlanta's offense. He's been very good since taking over, especially this year in real life. The first year there were some struggles with him and Matt Ryan. You can now see our schedule. It is a lot of losses and a lot of blowouts. Not very many close games for the most part, other than the 49ers, which we did lose to in embarrassing fashion. You can see our offense really struggled. Our defense was pretty good, 10th in all of the NFL. And then finally on our roster, we do have the secondary. You have Darrelle Revis, who really has struggled this year. He's been out of shape and is getting up there in age. Might have been a big waste of a contract. and a poor signing by the Jets, giving a lot of money to him. He's just really struggling. Might be a guy who might move to safety. Then you also have a lot of unproven guys, just like Calvin Pryor, who was a former high draft pick, who hasn't done a whole lot. He definitely still has that enforcer, big hitter as a defensive player, but does struggle in coverage. Then outside of Darrelle Revis, a lot of question marks at cornerback. That's definitely a position that we'll have to target. Not a lot of great guys there. You can see Buster Screen, but he's more of a nickel guy. Definitely cannot play on the outside. So like I said, there's a lot of pieces on this roster, but still a ton of holes that have to be filled. This is not a one-year rebuilding project for sure. This will probably take a couple of years, and will take a lot of good draft picks and a lot of good signings for this to really become a Super Bowl contender, which is what they were thought to be coming into this year. Definitely going to have to be smart, not overspending in free agency, trying to get that quick fix, because that almost never works out. That's what the Jets have tried in the past, and it's failed horribly almost every single time. You can see the Pittsburgh Steelers did lead the NFL in offenses. We were third worst in the entire NFL in first downs. Our defense was pretty good. Our passing defense was actually very good, which is surprising based on the actual personnel we have. We did not do very good in sacks, towards the bottom of the NFL. Also, we were not able to get many interceptions. Did force a ton of forced fumbles, though, which is good to see. There are a lot of hard hitters on this defense. Now, looking at the award winners, of course, you can see the Patriots and the AFC East are still that top dog, and definitely who will be chasing. But Tom Brady also nearing the end of his career. Bill Belichick might also be retiring. Of course, he's not actually in the game. They have some generic guy in his place. You can see some of the awards. We barely had any players on any of these lists. I know Darren Lee was sort of high, along with Jordan Jenkins, on Defensive Rookie of the Year in the AFC. You can see the playoffs as in the divisional round, Oakland, Tampa Bay, San Diego, and Green Bay all were victorious. And that would lead to Oakland and Tampa meeting in the Super Bowl. So an interesting matchup. A rematch of, I believe, was the 2000 Super Bowl. But I hope you did enjoy this episode. We'll end off with the Pro Bowlers. If you did, please leave a like down below. Leave your comments on the series down below. What are the positions you feel the Jets and this franchise need to be targeting in the draft and free agency? Like I said, quarterback is something that we can't really force because of the draft picks already invested in the position. And we have people on the roster, and there are a lot of other positions that we'll need to fill. I'm hoping to have the offseason up in the next couple of days and really get this series rolling. I will see you for the offseason, though, because I'm out.